Hello, all. Welcome to the Pyramid Podcast, where three lads discuss all things the English football pyramid. On today's episode, we'll have a look back at the Champions League action with wins for Arsenal, Man City, and Man United, but defeat for Newcastle against Dortmund. Premier League action continues with the big one, the Manchester Derby. We'll look back at the main results from the midweek EFL and ahead to the weekend fixtures. We go again with the Pyramid Pod Cup after postponement at Rotherham last weekend. Laura will talk us through Yeovil's continued winning streak, and we'll finish with a Pyramid Pod treble. I'm your host, Alex Murphy, and once again, I'm joined by Tom Lawrence and Tom Gallagher. Boys, just first of all, a bit of an apology from me. So we haven't done Monday's episode and got through to Thursday. Rather selfishly, my wife Yasmin went into labour on Sunday and gave birth on Monday. So she wasn't quite keen on me doing podcasts that evening. So we have skipped one. But yeah, we're back now. Start with the Champs League. So Tomo, come to you. United got the 3 points that they needed, but very, very lucky in the end.
Yeah. And before I obviously speak a little bit about that, I'd just like to offer mine and Laura's congratulations, Murphy, to you and your partner.
Thanks very much.
And yeah, so on to more important things, United. Another piss poor performance. I was speaking to my brother about this morning. He went to the game and we haven't actually played one decent game of football this whole season. It is hard to remain positive when that happens, but I do appreciate we have, like, our injuries are just unbelievable. So that can happen where you just look a bit disjointed, etc., etc. But there's a lot of question marks over the team at the minute. The first half was an absolute write-off. We were shocking. The second half, we got a little bit better when Eriksen come on. The problem Ten Hag has at the minute, I think, especially in midfield, is, say for instance, if he starts Eriksen, obviously on the ball we look a little bit better. Off the ball, not so much, because Eriksen's a bit of a liability off the ball. But then if he starts Casemiro, or if he starts Amrabat or McTominay in those positions, then we sacrifice that on the ball stuff. And I mean, even you hope that we look a little bit more assured going backwards, but I don't even know if that works. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, we got the 3 points. Great goal for Harry Maguire. We spoke about him getting a stick. We probably give him a bit of stick as well in the past. So happy for him. Happy for Onana. He had a good game. He's had his struggles. So, and look, it's one of those ones where it's just 3 points. At the end of the day, after 3 games in the Champions League, it's quite safe to say we're not going to win the Champions League.
Yeah.
So you're looking at scraping through in second place, hopefully, if we get a result in Galatasaray, and then potentially getting a good draw. And then obviously if you get into the quarters after the last 16, then that's probably a successful Champions League campaign for United. But yeah, look, at the end, I'm not going to moan. We won the game, and that's what needed to happen. And then obviously we look forward to the Manchester Derby on Sunday, which I am shitting myself about. I can't lie. It's at Old Trafford, and I can almost see, I think it was the 11 or 12-year anniversary of or maybe even the 10-year anniversary of the 6-1 the other day. And I can see that kind of 6-1 vibe happening again. I know that's negative, and I know you'll probably have a go at me for that, Laura, but yeah.
We'll come on to the Manchester Derby in a bit because I've got similar worries. But Laura, I think when we spoke about United with yourself before, you've spoken a bit about sort of as fans having positivity, but you've also kind of reflected on Ten Hag's time in charge as not that great. Just again, from an outsider looking in, is it just a case of, even though United have played badly against Sheffield United and against Copenhagen, is it you've got the victories, you've got injuries, keep positive and move on?
Well, firstly, I don't reflect on Erik ten Hag's tenure so far as not being great. I just don't like him. I don't like the way he comes across and the way he treats his players. I don't want to, start a personal attack on the man, but I just wouldn't want him being manager of the football club. Overall, the job he's done, I think, is okay. Now, let me ask you this question a minute. If you were a Newcastle fan at the moment, would you think there's room for optimism and positivity? Yes or no?
Yes.
Black and white answer, yes.
Yeah, excuse the pun. Okay, well, Man United are 1 point behind Newcastle in the league, and they've got 1 point less than Newcastle in the Champions League. Newcastle having a great season, firing all cylinders, giving their fans great nights in Champions League, and also putting teams to bed in the Premier League as well. So Newcastle, lots of room for optimism and positivity. Man United haven't had a good performance all season, but there's still 1 point between those two teams. Now, you then look at the goal difference, which is the big differential here. Newcastle is plus 15 and Man United is -2 in the Premier League. And there in which lies the problem, I think. And this is all going to culminate in me suggesting Man United bring Sir Alex Ferguson back to manage the club. Because I just don't think former players that are pundits, people in the media that used to play for Man United, all the fans that have grown up supporting Man United because of the great glory years of the 90s and the early 2000s are going to be happy until you get back to exactly what you had before under Fergie. And I don't think any other manager is capable of doing it. So why not just bring Sir Alex back, let him play exactly how he played back in 2013 and see how that goes?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting suggestion. Whether Sir Alex, who I think is now 110, I think, would be willing to come back or not is a different question. But Laura, I think you're bang on about the goals. I would just say, obviously, sat and watched the game, and I was thinking to myself, United, I think we said it on the pod before, I don't think United have been 2 goals up in a game all season. I don't think there's been a point where we've had more than a 1 goal lead, but we had chances. We had Rashford kind of run through, heavy touch runs through to the keeper. Garnacho did the same. We broke and Garnacho had a shot, and then McTominay missed the follow-up. Højlund had a couple sort of half chances. There was a couple of penalty shouts and that sort of thing, but it's never a new thing with United that we're not putting the ball in the back of the net. And it's like, well, we've got Rashford, who scored 30 last year. We've got Garnacho, who's signed a new deal and looks an amazing prospect. We've signed a striker in Højlund who's meant to be an actual number 9 who can play. We signed Anthony, who's a £90 million winger. We've got Bruno Fernandes, who, De Bruyne says he's the best 10 in the league, maybe other than himself, and he's a creative machine. And you see what he does for Portugal. So I just can't understand why the ball is never in the back of the net for United. I don't get that.
I don't have an answer to that either. But but listen, what I compare it to would be, so we brought in Højlund this year, 20-year-old, up and comer, definitely looks like a superstar for the future. In a similar vein, Man City last season brought in Julian Alvarez, an up and comer, superstar for the future, youngster, probably not ready to sort of lead the line straight away. The difference being is in the same season, City go and buy Haaland and United don't go and buy Kane. And Alvarez probably took last season, he was in and out of the team a bit. He was still class and showing bits and pieces. And then this season, he's looked unbelievable as well. And Haaland, obviously, we don't need to speak about Haaland. And it's just, the thing is, when United sign these attacking players, us fans, we kind of go, well, they're the be all and end all. They're going to solve all our issues, and it just doesn't quite work out like that. And it just, look, at the end of the day, we're not a functioning team at the minute. We are scraping by, getting a couple of results. At the end of the day, we've won 3 in a row, albeit, like I said, just scraping through. I don't think it will, like the sort of the flow of football and the confidence levels and how we play will improve that much until we get everyone back fit and sort of a settled starting 11. So that'll take some time. But I don't want to bang on about United, to be honest, too much.
We will move on, but it feels to me a little bit like Ten Hag started to get a little bit desperate for results as well. I think he had this kind of clear ethos and way of play that he wanted to implement, and he had players who he wasn't having. So let me give you 2 names straight away, McTominay and Maguire. And it feels now like he's almost searching for wins in any way, regardless of implementing a style of play. So it's like McTominay's been in the squad because he scored that brace off the bench. He started both games. Maguire, who I know we've got injuries at the back, but Maguire, who let's be real, Ten Hag saying that he's a great player and part of the squad, but he stripped him of captaincy and not playing him. that's a call to me that he wants him to leave the club. They're both starting now for United. You got Mason Mount, who we've signed for 60 mil, sat on the bench unused in the Champions League, and I think had 5 minutes against Sheffield United. So I think desperation started to kick in for Ten Hag a bit about how can I just put the most impactful team out to get a result rather than implement a style of play that he wants to long term. So yeah, look, we'll move on and we'll touch on the Manchester derby, but I think it's really worrying for Ten Hag at the minute. Laura, you just touched on another side who's similar season so far to United, albeit atmosphere around the club being a bit different. But Newcastle lost versus Dortmund. I think that puts them third in their group on 4 points. But Isak went off injured, as did Jacob Murphy. So a couple little problems creeping in for Newcastle.
Yeah, but they've got a good squad, Newcastle. They can, if Isaac's injured, hopefully they can just bring in Callum Wilson and get him on a run of form. And I think I've touched on this before. I think if you look all over the pitch in every position for Newcastle, maybe other than centre half, which is probably killed off a little bit more with injuries, they're pretty strong. So I don't think they'll be too worried about that. I think that's an annoying loss, though, at home to Dortmund off the back of that massive PSG win. They've been so good at home, very, very difficult to beat. And just to let it sort of fizzle out into what I didn't watch the game because I was watching Leeds, but to let it fizzle out into a 1-0 loss, and now they've got to go to PSG and go to Dortmund in the next 2 games. All of a sudden, they've gone from, if they'd won last night, probably all but through, to now needing to get a result away from home. And judging by the AC Milan trip that they had to the San Siro at the beginning of the Champions League, they're not going to find that quite as easy without that sort of atmosphere pushing them on at St James's Park. So that was a difficult one for them. But just to touch on Newcastle in the league, they've gone and trounced Palace 4-0 at the weekend. I think they're starting to look inevitable in the Premier League. Every single player just looks at it for Newcastle at the moment in the league. And I think they know because of that squad depth that they can't have a bad game. If Wilson doesn't score, it could be Isaac. If Gordon doesn't do well, they've got Murphy or Barnes around one or whoever's going to come in. So that squad competition is very, very good at Newcastle. Their performance levels, I think, are very high, and they're just they had a bit of an indifferent start, didn't they? But they're 6th now, and I think they're flying in the Premier League. Just annoying, I would say, as a Newcastle fan. You can't have it all, and they're probably not going to win the Champions League this season. But if they could have just beaten Dortmund and reversed that result 1-0 last night, things would be very, very rosy for them. But then again, maybe they'll go to Germany or go to France and get a result out there as well. So I'd be extremely happy if I was a Newcastle fan at the moment. I think it just feels like good vibes all round.
Yeah, look, if there's one negative to come out of a 4-1 win against PSG, it is that it sort of raised everyone's expectations and elevated everyone's expectations to probably a level that Newcastle weren't at. And like we were all talking about that group of death, Dortmund, Milan, PSG, and Newcastle. At the end of the day, Dortmund are a good team. And I think Rafa Honenstein in one of his podcasts said that Dortmund in the whole of 2023 are like the best performing team points to game ratio in the whole of Europe. So they're a really good team. And they went to Newcastle and shut up shop, almost said to Newcastle, come on then, break us down. Whereas obviously we talked about the PSG game. They played 4 forwards and open and expansive football, and that just plays into Newcastle's hands. And Eddie Howe, or Newcastle under Eddie Howe, has been, obviously he's done a really good job, but they've been almost sort of sit back, counter attack, blood and thunder, and like beat teams down like that. Whereas Dortmund worked them out in the first half, and actually, if you watch the second half, Newcastle did really well. They just couldn't. They had a couple of good chances, couldn't finish the dinner. On another night, they would have got the draw, which would have been a great result, or could have even turned it around, which have obviously been an even better result. I wouldn't worry too much about Newcastle losing that game, to be honest. Like you say, the issues arise from maybe if Isak's out for 3 or 4 weeks now, then they've got to rely heavily on Wilson. Murphy's looked rejuvenated. Like I was talking to a Newcastle fan this morning. The most impressive thing about Eddie Howe and Newcastle is how well your likes of Jacob Murphy have turned around, and all of a sudden they're looking like proper Premier League stars, as opposed to before under Bruce, Jacob Murphy looked like a lower Prem Championship player. And so I wouldn't worry too much. They're playing Wolves this weekend. Be a tough game. We all know, like Gary O'Neill spoke a little bit about his appearance on Monday Night Football. He was very impressive, wasn't he? And so that won't be an easy game. It's at Molineux. So, but yeah, Newcastle. I wouldn't worry too much about a 1-0 defeat to Dortmund. Dortmund, a very good team.
Yeah, I didn't realise Dortmund were doing as well. For some reason, I had the perception that Dortmund weren't the side of old, but I think they're 2 points off top in the Bundesliga, 1 point behind Bayern Munich in fourth place. And I know their Champions League campaign and maybe I've got off to a great start. But I think Ali McCoist was on commentary last night, if I remember rightly, and he was saying about Dortmund managed to quiet the Newcastle crowd. And I know everyone keeps saying that now. It turns into a bit of a cauldron at St. James's Park, but they managed to seem to get the crowd down, didn't they? It wasn't like tackles getting cheered and, you know, the sort of Newcastle fans whipped up into a frenzy. They managed that game really well. So I was impressed with them. Just move on to a couple of other Champions League games, guys. So Arsenal won in Seville. Martinelli and Jesus scored for them. Impressive result, that, Tomo. I don't think many English sides go and win in Spain and particularly Seville. I mean, definitely not United, but great win that for Arsenal.
Yeah, great win. And I must confess, I obviously didn't watch that game, but I watched the highlights and Gabriel Jesus looked like that was his best game in an Arsenal shirt. And unfortunately for them, he come off injured. I think he had a tight hamstring. So it'd be interesting to see if he plays this weekend or not. But because he's obviously just come into a bit of form, his turn for the first goal and pass was unbelievable. And then his goal was sort of he's in from the left and he cuts inside and curls one top bins. It's just, if anyone hasn't seen it, go and watch it. It's unbelievable. And a great result for them. Probably their toughest fixture in the group, Sevilla away. But let's be honest, Sevilla probably lost that game on purpose because they want their end goal is to finish third in the group and then win the Europa League, isn't it? So, yeah, not really much else to say, to be honest. Just a great result for Arsenal. Raya didn't cover himself in glory again, and that's one to look for in the future. But I expect him to keep his place, and I don't expect Ramsdale to come in anytime soon, unless obviously he throws in a couple of howlers on the weekend.
Yeah, good win for Arsenal there. And then just City, unsurprisingly, won in Switzerland against Young Boys. Haaland scored a brace. Rodri was man of the match, and Akanji scored for them. But he is going to be suspended for Manchester Derby.
Just a quick one on Haaland. So he got a couple goals, didn't he, last night? And it was in a bit of a drought in the Champions League. He hadn't scored since the quarterfinal last season. So I don't know how many games that is, 5 or 6. But I had a look at his Champions League stats. He scored. So even though he's gone 6 or 7 games without scoring in the Champions League, he's now scored 37 goals in 33 games in Champions League. Okay, honestly.
And he got like more goals than like R9 already in the Champions League, who's like people say is the greatest ever striker. I'm pretty sure it's R9. If not, it's a really big player. But he's just a freak, isn't it? You know, for someone who's still got another, if he stays in European leagues, you know, another 10, 15 years at it.
Yeah.
But you say that Haaland hadn't scored since the quarterfinal last year. What you failed to mention is in that quarterfinal, he scored 5 against RB Leipzig.
Yeah.
So that makes up for the goal a game ratio and more.
Yeah, true.
And then just a look ahead to English sides tonight in the other European competitions. Liverpool have got Toulouse, Villa versus AZ Alkmaar, Brighton versus Ajax, which looked a tasty fixture, but I've seen that Ajax are actually in the relegation zones of the Eredivisie, which is mad, and West Ham versus Olympiacos. So some big games for those guys there, and hopefully they'll be hopeful that doesn't affect their Premier League form at the weekend. So we'll move on to the Prem. Tomo, you've touched on the Manchester derby there. Obviously spoke a bit about United's form already and City, but any positives for United ahead of that fixture other than Akanji being suspended? Any good stats for us?
No good stats, mate. No, this is probably the least confident I've ever gone into a game at Old Trafford. And actually, I know we won the game last year, but it was mainly due to that horrendous Rashford offside, Bruno Fernandes incident, if you remember rightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't see anything other than a comfortable City win. Just almost like an arm's length win where they just beat us 2 or 3-0, and it's almost like they're bringing off Rodri and Haaland and Alvarez on the 60th minute because they're resting them for the week or whatever it might be. I've got no positives. No positives to think about that fixture. Just sort of almost watching it from behind the back of the settee. No positive stats. I'm sorry, mate.
Lauro?
Here's a couple of positive stats. Kevin De Bruyne won't be playing, and they no longer have Gundogan. And I disagree with a lot of the stuff that you said there. I know, like, City are a good side and it's a difficult game, but you've had your fair share of success against them, I think, over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, even though that you've been pretty crap and they've been brilliant. And I'm still not convinced, and I don't know what it's going to take to convince me on City, but I'm not. I mean, Tottenham are top of the league. Arsenal and City are level pegging. They're not blowing everyone out the water. We just have a perception of them because they won the treble last year. And I know it's going to be difficult for them to live up to last year's performance levels with that kind of consistency. But I don't think they're the same side. And I do think they are going to be there to be got at a little bit more this season. And going to Old Trafford ain't easy. I know as a Man United fan, you sat there every week thinking, here we go again. But more often than not, you do come out with good results. And you're not in that bad a form at the moment. And you've got some good positives, i.e. Harry Maguire's turned a bit of a corner. Onana's on top of the world after his penalty save. 2 people that were walking memes 2 weeks ago are now Manchester sort of national treasures. So you're going in with a little bit of credit in the bank, I think. And I think you can go and have a real good go at them. And like Rashford's come alive in this fixture before. Like if I was a United fan, I'd be thinking, right, bang up for this. City have won, 2 of the last 5, lost 3, something like that in all competitions, which for them is absolutely appalling. So still a little bit of pressure on City to hit the top again. Spurs could go clear on Friday night at the top of the league. I know it's still early stages, but City ain't going to want to be chasing point gaps again like they were last season, the season before, too many times in a row, because at some point it won't happen. So pressure still on City, not the side they were last season. Man United at home, little bit of pressure off for United, pressure on for City. No De Bruyne, no Gundogan. I'm talking myself into another huge prediction here. I'm not going to say it, but more room for optimism in that game than you're giving your team credit for, in my opinion.
Yeah. The only thing is, right, is you are right in the sense that City don't look their free-flowing best this year, but they still are right up there and are still winning more than not, obviously, barring the 3 games that Rodri didn't play. And at the end of the day, at some point, City will click. And quite often they click against United and we get an absolute pasting. So it'll be maybe because I'm a little bit more emotionally invested, I'm just sort of a little bit more hesitant to be positive.
You're setting yourself up to fail. So when if it happens, you can be like, I called it. You don't want to be like, oh, we're going to win 2-0 and we'll play well, and then be absolutely gutted. So I get what you're doing, Tomo, but I've not got much confidence either, to be honest. I think United have looked terrible in every single game they've played, and it's not so much other than the I think Palace in the cup, we looked decent in that, but we just don't look good in any game. And I don't know if he knows what side to play at the minute either. I guess Casemiro is still injured. We've got Martinez out. We've got Wan-Bissaka out. We've got Shaw out, who'd all be playing. We're obviously got Reguilon, who's coming back into fitness a bit. We've got Maguire, who's now starting. Varane looking a little bit injured. He's trying to find out what midfield works at the minute with what he's got with Amrabat, Mason Mount, Scott McTominay, Christian Eriksen, and then he seems to play Bruno in the 10. I don't think United are settled at the minute. I don't think they look good in any game. I don't think we lost at Old Trafford last year, or if we did, it was once, maybe the first game of the season or something like that. But it's not been that great this year, has it? We've lost to Palace in the league. We've lost to Brighton in the league. at home. So yeah, I'm going to go City quite comfortable win. Obviously, would love Man United to win that game, but I don't have much confidence there at all. And I really didn't like Haaland scoring a brace in the week either. I think he'll be up for the derby.
Just quickly, maybe a rare stat input from me, and maybe one that you wouldn't think. 5 teams in the Premier League have scored more goals than Man City this season. So they're not blowing teams away, even when they're winning. But the one stat that does stick out, and they've come in for quite a lot of praise on this recently, but with City, you think about them going out and smashing teams with their brilliant attack. No one has conceded less than Man City. They've conceded 7 Premier League goals this year, and you forget that it's not just keeping them out; it's actually trying to affect the game at the other end of the pitch. And probably United being a little bit toothless this year, you are going to need big games from your Rashfords, your Brunos, and your Højlunds if there is going to be any chance of it. But I don't mind the draw at 3-1. I've just checked the odds. I wouldn't surprise me if it was like 0-0, 1-1 this game. And I don't think 3-1 is too bad for that. You can get United at nearly 5s. But I probably would steer clear of that. But I wouldn't put it past United getting a point here. And again, I say this every week. I'd love it for the sake of the title race.
The only stat I've got on that, Loro, on the draw, for anyone listening who wants to bet on that, is that out of the last 16 fixtures, there's only been one draw in the Manchester derby. It does seem lately, especially in recent history, that one team or the other gets the result. So
have you got breakdown of the other 15, Tomo, what it is between City United? Because I know we normally, like, when we do lose, we tend to get smashed, but we've had some decent wins against City, haven't we?
let me just count.
Because if you think
so
about...
City have won 8,
Yeah.
United have won 6, and then one's drawn. So actually, so it is. Yeah, we've got a good sort of we've got a good record.
That's even, isn't it? Man City have won what, 5 out of the last 6 leagues, and you're pretty much 50-50 with them head to head. So, I mean, we haven't even spoke about the fact that it's a proper derby. Do you know what I mean? Form normally goes out the window, wherever you are in the league. Normally, it's a really difficult game. Everton made it difficult for large periods against Liverpool last week. So, yeah, Weymouth made it difficult for Yeovil as well on Tuesday night in the second half. So, look, it's a one-off game, albeit it happens twice a year. And I think United have got every chance.
Yeah, I'm starting to talk myself round now. We had that win last year, albeit VAR. I think, was it the year before where Edison, might have been a bit longer actually, rolled it out to McTominay, who just passed it into the net to make it 2-0 and slid into the Stretford end. So, yeah, all right, 3-0 United.
Was that that was March? Yeah, that was March 2020, Matt.
Was it that long ago?
That was
just quick. What I'm trying to say is, like, it's not. There's been seasons recently where you've gone into that game and I thought you have got no chance. But just in the context of where we are at the moment, both clubs' recent form, who will and won't be playing, I just think you've got a better chance than maybe you're giving yourself credit for. I'd still have City as favourites, obviously, but I'd be back in the draw.
Okay. Right, we'll move on from that one, boys. And obviously that's at 3:30 on Sunday, that game. But we'll come forward a bit to Friday night football. And Loro, Tottenham host Palace. I didn't get to watch Monday night football, unfortunately. I was still in hospital, but I did have Son, Udogie, and Maddison in my team, and managed to catch the scoreline and see that they'd got another victory, and Maddison and Son had started again. But just they keep on churning out the results, and they'll be looking to win against Palace at home as well.
Yeah, I don't know really what more we can say about Spurs at the moment. At some point, there's going to have to come a point where we start speaking about their credentials in the title race, but it isn't yet, is it? And it probably isn't this side of Christmas. But I'm just waiting for them to slip up. We didn't do it last week, but I was going to say, like, that Fulham game looked tricky because it's one that if you want to be right up there, you can't beat Man United and draw to Arsenal, win the big games, but then drop points like Spurs have done in the past against, in inverted commas, easier opposition. But they just were way better than Fulham, weren't they? And Sonny seems to be taking the team by storm this season in Kane's absence. And actually, they're making a couple of those ridiculous TalkSport callers in over the last few years that call in and say, I think we're better without Kane. And everyone just ridicules them. Well, they're actually making that look a pretty good point in the minute. And Maddison looks signing of the season. I think Postecoglou tactically, the most obvious thing in the world, but reverting to a back four and playing that kind of system has just worked wonders. They've got a settled kind of team where the same 11 to 14, 11 to 15 players pretty much play every week. And, you don't really see a lot stopping them at the moment. And they're going to Crystal Palace, which is normally a tricky place to go, but they're coming off the back of a 4-0 thumping. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can make a case for them dropping any points anytime soon. I don't know when they've got City. That'll be a big test for them. I was thinking, have Tottenham just had a really easy start to the season? But they've played Man United. They've played Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? They've played Liverpool, albeit on the right end of that VAR decision. So it's not been a touch. It's not been an easy touch for them so far. They're just playing very good football. They haven't lost a football match. And the Ange Postecoglou train rolls on. And I was watching his pre-match interview earlier on today, or pre-weekend fixture interview. And again, very, very impressive. Calm, measured, balanced with his words, not get carried away, but knowing that he's just starting to begin something quite special at that football club and something that they probably haven't experienced before, ever.
Yeah, I absolutely love him. Do you know what? He got asked that question after the Fulham game, didn't he? Someone said, like, can you win the Premier League? Like, and rather than going, oh, don't be stupid, we'll take it one game by game, like just his standard manager answer, he said, well, unless there's any rules to say that Tottenham can't win the Premier League, I think we can. And I just thought, yeah, do you know what? That's a great answer. he just comes up with all these one-liners that are fantastic. And the big thing I think that's in Spurs' favour this year is that they're not in any European football. So actually, they've got their next game after the Palace game on Friday is 10 days' time against Chelsea. I think it's against Chelsea. And
Yeah.
and you talk about, well, Spurs potentially, could they ride out a couple of injuries to important players because their squad might not be at the level of your Cities and your Arsenals, etc. But the fact that they haven't got as many games, and obviously they got knocked out of the Carabao Cup early, gives the players adequate rest between games, means that they won't be sort of overexerted and in that red zone where potentially you get injuries, etc. So your Madisons of this world could potentially, or there's more chances of the players staying fit throughout the whole season. And I'd love it. I would like, obviously, if United don't win the league, which we're not going to, but I would absolutely love it if Spurs won the league. And I think it would be funny because Harry Kane's left. And they're just a really likable team. And it's also one of the first summers in a long time for Tottenham where they've basically bought in 4 players. I know they bought Udogie in January, but he joined really this year. So they bought Udogie, Van der Ven, the keeper, and Maddison. And they've all just slotted into the starting 11 and all done really well. And if you compare that to, say, I know I'm going to, like Man United, you go and sign Højlund, Mount, Onana, Amrabat, and it's like Mount's not getting a look in. Onana's looked terrible. Amrabat is fitness issues, and Højlund's okay. He's probably the only positive. So it's like, that's it. It's not really rocket science, is it? You buy players who improve your first team and create an environment for them to succeed, and they will deliver. And do you know what? And I know I'm banging on it, but it actually reminds me, Laura, I know we did the Stuart Broad podcast with Simon Jordan today. It reminds me, Ange Postecoglou, of Bazball, and how you just completely come in and change the philosophy and the mindset of the whole club and say, well, we're not afraid to lose anymore, or we're going to be positive in every aspect of what we do. And everyone's got on board with it. And I think they'll go to Palace and win.
I also think there's a lot of in football now, and I enjoyed the Gary O'Neill thing on Monday Night Football, and I enjoyed Thomas Frank and all of that. They come across well. You learn stuff as novices in terms of football tactics, but there's a lot of over coaching that goes on now. All throughout the leagues, in the Premier League down to League Two conference, everyone, whether it's playing out from the back, whether it's low blocks, high blocks, presses, this, that, and the other. And gone are the days, or not gone are the days, but a lot rarer now that you see a proper man manager motivator like a Harry Redknapp or whatever. And Ange Postecoglou is one of those, but is also tactically equipped to lead a team like Tottenham with good players and field a team and get them going. So he seems to have a good balance of all the things you need as a manager. But as we've always said, like, you just listen to him and you think, I would, if he was my manager in any walk of life, I'd go with him and I'd follow him. And that's good leadership, and that's showing on the pitch at the moment. Do agree that not having European football is a big help. To be fair, teams often do well, don't they, when they've got a good side that is able to compete in the Premier League, and they don't have the distraction of football, and they can play games maybe more often on the Saturday rather than the Sunday, and all those sorts of things. So, few things in their favour, but I think we've got a little while longer to go until we can not call them title challenges. They have to be title challenges at the moment, but to say that they're in a title race, because that doesn't begin till after Christmas. But if they're up there in January, maybe that's a window where they can attract a different kind of player or have different kind of conversations with personnel that maybe they wouldn't have done in previous years due to Spurs being Spurs and being 6th or 7th or whatever. So yeah, all good signs for Spurs at the moment, and hopefully they can go win tomorrow night.
Another good sign, just quickly before we move on.
Go on.
Their best midfielder from the last couple of seasons, Rodrigo Bentancur, is back to fitness now, and I've been really impressed with him in a piss poor Tottenham team, and he obviously got injured, and now I'm really looking forward to watching him play alongside Basuma and Maddison, or whichever sort of functionality of their midfield they choose. But in Ange ball, I think he's going to really thrive. So that's another plus for them, and obviously gives them options in that midfield area as well.
Just great times for Spurs, isn't it? Having that sort of caliber of player come back in. Just a couple bits for fitness wise for them for the weekend. Sarr is currently struggling with illness, and Udogie came off on Monday with a muscular injury just before the 60th minute, actually, which meant that he didn't get clean sheet on FPL, but have to monitor that. But yeah, think they'll go and win at Palace. Apologies, I think I said Spurs were home earlier, but think they'll go and win at Palace, who've only won one in their last 5 Premier League games, which was at Old Trafford. So yeah, good times for Spurs. Another team up there in North London, Arsenal, they host Sheffield United. Just touched on the fact that they obviously won in the week in Seville, but Sheffield United home surely is the fixture at the minute that teams look at as the biggest banker. That's got to be a fair few goals, Loro, for Arsenal this weekend.
Yes, it feels like a gimme, doesn't it? I watched Sheffield United, and I actually think that, like, they're an all right side, but they're just a Championship side playing in the Premier League, and it's hard to watch like a good manager that's done good things in Paul Heckingbottom over the last year to 18 months at Sheffield United just, slide into getting the sack. And I'm actually surprised he's still there, not because I don't think he should be, but because the rumours have been circulating for probably 4 or 5 weeks now, and we've just had an international break. So, I mean, good to see him still there, but just they've got no luck, have they? It's Arsenal away, and they're just imperious, aren't they? Very, very good at scoring goals. And I think Sheffield United are probably going to have to score 6 to win, which I don't think Ollie McBurney and Jordan Archer will have. Is it Jordan or Cameron Archer? Cameron Archer have in them. So, look, tricky fixture for Sheffield United. But I tell you what would annoy me is if they sack Heckingbottom after this game, because it's not like they've got a chance of winning that game, really. Do you know what I mean? So either sack him now or give him another run of Premier League fixtures where they might be in them. But to be fair, what if we had 12, 13 games now and they've got 1 point? It's not a great return, is it? And even Luton and Burnley, Burnley particularly, having a shocking start to the season, have at least got a win under their belt. So bad start for Sheffield United. Going to get worse this weekend, but hopefully Heckingbottom just given a little bit more time after that to see if he can drag them out of it. But yeah, they're the worst side in the league, aren't they, along with Luton?
After the Arsenal game, they're home to Wolves, away at Brighton, home to Bournemouth, away at Burnley. So, as you say, Laura, the Arsenal game aside, it kind of feels like, well, that was going to be a free hit anyway. If you don't win that, that's nothing too shocking. But I think if he doesn't go and win at home to Wolves, they'll then be like, right, we need to get someone in ready for that run of fixtures, including Bournemouth and Burnley, to try and get points there. Otherwise, they're all but down then anyway. Tomo, just very quickly, obviously touched on Jesus looking great, and I doubt you give Sheffield United much hope, but from an FPL point of view, anyone from Arsenal in your side?
No. And it'd be one of those ones where I'm like, I just haven't got enough transfers to get people in and stuff. And it's one of those ones where I'll basically be watching that with my FPL hat on, thinking like Arsenal win 3-0, but Zinchenko gets all three or something. Do you know what I'm saying? Look, Arsenal, they haven't actually been at their free-flowing best this year, have they? But they're really good defensively. They've kept the most clean sheets in the Premier League. They're at home. Sheffield United, like Laura was saying, don't look great going forward. So I expect Arsenal to win to nil, and I think it will probably be 3 or 4. But not much to add, to be honest, mate.
No, and just looking ahead to Arsenal and looking past the Sheffield United game, they've got West Ham away in the EFL Cup, which will always be a bit of a tricky fixture. But they then, in the Prem next Saturday at 5:30, go away to Newcastle, which will be a huge game. If they go and get 3 points there, after obviously beating City, beating United, came back to get in the end, positive point against Chelsea, that'll be a huge statement from Arsenal, that one. But yeah, expecting a bit of a cricket score, 3 p.m. Saturday that is as well. So yeah, expecting a bit of a cricket score for Arsenal there. Just touched on Arsenal played Chelsea last weekend, and Chelsea, I think, were 2-0 up, weren't they, and let it slip for Arsenal to come back to 2-2. Saturday lunchtime they host Brentford, and Chelsea seem to be finding a little bit of form now. Lauro, do you think that maybe Pochettino's style of play and influence is starting to rub off and they might start to become a bit of a force again?
No, just because I think they've been okay for 80 to 85% of the pitch all season. And we spoke about, I know they started Cole Palmer at the weekend, and he scored a penalty, but look at their goals at the weekend. One was a penalty and one was a fluke from Mudryk. They're still not carving teams open and scoring goals at will. Okay, they did against Burnley, and there are going to be teams that they're just too strong for. But I think that's a difficult game against Brentford. I just think Chelsea quite often over the last 18 months have been sort of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And if they can beat Brentford and beat them convincingly and start to put a run of form together this side of the international break as well, that would be good. Because, I mean, at this stage of the season, the table's still close. And I was looking earlier, I talk about United being a point behind Newcastle. Chelsea only a couple of points behind as well. So a couple of wins and they can springboard themselves into it. But I'm not convinced that they've got the top end of the pitch right with Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson, Mudryk. Sterling is their best outlet, but obviously not a striker. So, no, I'm not confident in Chelsea in most games at the moment. And I know you boys feel slightly differently about Brentford, but I actually rate them, and they're coming off the back of a good win against Burnley last weekend. So that's quite an interesting fixture for me. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's a loss for Chelsea and Brentford go there and nick a 2-1 or something because they can't finish their dinner often enough, in my opinion.
Is that a derby? With that Chelsea Brentford? Are they both West London?
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm just having a look at the odds for Brentford to win, and it's 17-4 on Sky Bet, and I fancy that. Brentford have won both.
Sorry, say that again.
17-4, 4-1.
Brentford are over 4-1.
Yeah. And
I think that is incredible odds. And I think I said this about, I know they're not Villa, but Villa a while ago when they went to Stamford Bridge, it'll be a very similar game to that, I think. And Brentford quite often do score goals as well. So carry on, Teagal. I cannot believe those odds.
Well, and listen, a couple of stats to back up that for our listeners. So Brentford have won both of their Premier League games at Stamford Bridge. So they've got a good record there. And Chelsea, since the start of February, have only won 2 home games in the Premier League. And do you know what? Who were they against?
Since what, this year?
Yeah, since
Leeds.
February. Yeah, so one was against Leeds, who obviously been relegated, and the other was against Luton in August. So, and I know they look good. They looked half decent against Arsenal, but to be honest, Arsenal were turgid, and they managed to get a draw out of nothing. I fancy Brentford, and I'm not very good at betting, so maybe I wouldn't put any money on, but yeah, I fancy Brentford there, definitely.
I think that's lunchtime on Saturday. Bit of an intriguing game, that one, actually. Looking forward to that one. Yeah, well, that'd be a cracker. Another game which I think looks really interesting, boys, in the Prem, Wolves versus Newcastle. We've touched on Newcastle at length throughout the history of the pod, and we touched on Gary O'Neill earlier, and I think people were impressed with him on Monday Night Football. Wolves, I mean, they started the season well, didn't they? Thinking all the way back to their performance at Old Trafford. Their league forms just started to pick up as well. I think in their last 3 league games, they obviously beat Man City, didn't they? Which was a big result. And then they drew with Villa, and then they had a good win at Bournemouth. They host Newcastle, who've obviously got Champions League in their system from the week. I'll make an early prediction there. I think Wolves might win at home against Newcastle. Tomo?
Nah. We were talking, Laura, you were talking earlier, weren't you, about obviously the similarities between United and Newcastle's season. But if you listen to these stats, so in the Premier League this season, Newcastle have scored the most goals. They've got the highest XG, the highest shot conversion rate. They've made the most big chances, and they've got the highest big chance conversion rate. So they're an exciting team to watch. They're free flowing, like good going forward. Callum Wilson's going to come back into the team now. He's averaging a goal every 66 minutes in the Premier League this season, so I'd back him to get a goal. Wolves, they're a bit up and down. I just think that Gary O'Neill put a lot of his eggs in that Bournemouth game last year, in that basket last week, and that's a massive result, and they're just inconsistent. So I just fancy Newcastle. They've obviously coming away from a disappointing result against Dortmund, albeit I thought it was a half decent second half performance from them. I just think Newcastle, they're like a top 4 club for me now, and I think they go there and win.
Yeah, I wasn't drawing comparisons between Man United and Newcastle. I was trying to offer some perspective in the fact that Newcastle are the media darlings, and Man United the opposite, but there's only 1 point between them. I did then go on to balance that by saying there's a 17-goal swing in the goal difference, and Newcastle were blowing teams away, which they did last week against Crystal Palace. We'll remember a game that they did it against Villa, but I do agree with you that they'll be too strong for Wolves, and I like Wolves. And I like what Gary O'Neill said the other night. The only thing I would say about that Gary O'Neill clip, just on reflection, just to play devil's advocate, I don't know if it's a little bit naive going that in depth on Monday Night Football, where it's going to go to everyone in the country about what they work on for 2 weeks in training. If you've been working on that, quite an important area of the pitch, sort of shuffling it from defence to attack, and you've been working on that for 2 weeks, it did well against Bournemouth, and you've just highlighted it and shown what all that work you've done behind closed doors has been like. Is that not a little bit, feeding the devil type thing?
Yeah, I think.
However,
go on.
Go on.
I was
just going to say maybe he's a genius and he doesn't think any of that, and he's just spoon feeding that into the opposition, and he's going to do something completely different. But I thought he was very, very impressive in the way he came across and the way he spoke. And I like good talkers. I thought he was quite captivating. I thought if I was a player, yeah, I'd buy into what you're saying. You sound very believable. You sound knowledgeable. You sound like you know what you're talking about. But on the flip side of that, he's very, very excited after a win away at Bournemouth. Yeah. And he's gone on Monday Night Football and he said, yeah, look what I've just done for the last 2 weeks. It resulted in this. But now what about next week when you play Newcastle, when Eddie Howe doesn't let the double pivot split and break the team apart in that sense? So let's see if he's got a plan B. I fancy Newcastle.
Yeah, it's fantastic insight for the likes of us, isn't it? Because that's what you pay your Sky subscription for, that kind of thing. But if I was like the Wolves chairman or a Wolves fan, I wouldn't really. Obviously, it's great insight, but I wouldn't be like cheering that kind of vibe. It's like you're almost too open, and you're setting yourself up for a fall. And if they go and get spun 3-0 here, your fans start going, well, where are you on Monday Night Football this week? Do you know what I mean? It's like it was a bit self-indulgent for me, even though I did think it was great insight.
Do you think managers of Prem sides mid-season, regardless of if they've played at the weekend or anything like that, should be going on and doing insight like that on Monday Night Football at all? Like, there seems to be a cut-off, doesn't there, of like a side like a Brentford or a Wolves, not to group those two sides together, but you can't picture like Klopp on Monday Night Football or Guardiola on Monday Night Football, or Ange or something like that. You know, like going in and offering insight mid-season of their team and their tactics and what they're doing. It just, as you say, great insight for people who pay their Sky subscription, but just feels a bit odd, doesn't it, having a Premier League gaffer on talking through his side and their tactics in a season show.
Do you know what I thought it was? It was a bit like him almost auditioning for his next job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think what Murph just said is you wouldn't see a Klopp or like a Pep Guardiola do that in a million years. Like there is like a self-serving element to it, isn't there? Where like they're presenting to the whole of the country, look, this is what I can do, this is what I know, look how well I speak, look how well I set the teams up, look at my tactics. If ever I get sacked at Wolves, just remember I did this and I can speak like that and I can do these tactics. So yeah, there's definitely an element of that to it. I remember Eddie Howe did it as well back in the Bournemouth days when he, not to group them together again, but normally when there's a team outside of the top 8 that are doing well, that's the sort of manager that will go on and speak with Carra and Neville, whoever on the Monday Night Football. You're not going to get Pep on there giving away all his secrets, are you? And maybe that says something.
You get people as well, don't you, who are ready to go back into work, come on it, don't they? I remember, I think it was Mourinho was under pressure at United, and Poch went and did a Monday Night Football and said he was looking forward to being back into football. I think Lampard's done it as well, and Gerrard's done it. It's almost like unemployed managers have a look at it as well.
Yeah, you've just reminded me of something actually, which made me cringe a little bit. On who did Villa play at the weekend? Was it on Sunday?
West Ham.
They beat West Ham, didn't they? Smashed them. But Dean Smith was there. He was on the punditry team. And after the game, they called Ollie Watkins over. And it was a little bit weird because obviously Dean Smith signed Ollie Watkins, I think, for Brentford and then for Villa. And Dean Smith was on his, probably auditioning for his next footballing job. And he was like, yeah, somebody came up and he was like, yeah, Ollie, tell him about the fish story. And Ollie Watkins was a little bit awkward. And he was like, oh, yeah, Gaffer got me to buy, they don't want to hear about this, but Gaffer got me to buy a fish and it died. And Dean Smith was like, yeah. But what I was trying to do is I was trying to instill that responsibility in a young man to know that when he's going out on a football pitch on a Saturday or Sunday, he's got the responsibility of the Villa fans on him. And that goldfish was significant. And that was the representative of it. Do you see what I mean? And I think the presenter was just like, yeah, but the fish died. So all you've done, Dean, is kill a goldfish. But congratulations to Unai Emery on getting the best out of Ollie Watkins because he's a different player now than he was under Dean Smith. And commiserations, Dean Smith. I'm sure you'll get another job. I'm not sure he'll be in the Premier League.
I feel it's a bit Graham Wesley getting bloody Lee Trundle to get on all fours and pretend to be an elephant to me. But yeah, nice one, Dean. Guys, just to wrap up the rest of the Premier League action. So we've got the European sides in action tonight, Thursday, but Liverpool host Forest. They're looking ominously good now, Liverpool. We said about a sneaky good start, didn't we? They've just blown that into a full-thrown good start now. They'll be looking for 3 points there. West Ham host Everton. Brighton, Villa host Luton, sorry. And then there's another game which I just quickly want to touch on, boys, which is Bournemouth versus Burnley. Doesn't look the most appetizing of fixtures, but I think an important game for both managers, and it could be, Tomo, I think you coined it El Sacico before we came on, which is if either of those managers don't pick up a win, they might be gone.
Yeah, I don't actually think Kompany's in danger because I think Burnley. I'd like to think the hierarchy at Burnley are well aware of their situation. The turnover of players they had over the summer was a joke, and let's be honest, Kompany is going to be the best that they could get. And he's almost proved that even if they do get relegated, he's the best one to bring you back up. So, yeah, that one. That he'll be fine. That Areola guy looks like it looks like the typical. The players were happy with Gary O'Neill, happy with how things are going, and obviously Gary O'Neill's proved at Wolves now that he's like a good Premier League manager as opposed to just an interim or sort of an assistant manager as he was to Scott Parker. And the players just don't seem to be buying into it, or it's hard to tell, but Bournemouth just look a little bit toothless, don't they? And they at the start of the season they looked decent, played okay, but like coming away with defeats. Yeah, that one's a tough one to call. I actually just think that will be a draw, and and potentially he's his job's safe for another week.
Yeah, I don't think the Bournemouth manager's job's going to be safe with a draw. I think they're shocking and been an absolute myth. And I don't think he deserved to get that job over Gary O'Neill. I understand the points at the time why they did it, but I think if you swap their names around and gave Gary O'Neill Androni Iraola as his name, he'd still be the manager. But Burnley is an interesting one. You're right; they're not going to sack Company. He did too well last season. He's probably got a season's worth of credit in the bank. But you think about the player turnover. You mentioned it, Tomo. Some of their best players last year were their loanees. So Nathan Teller was the top scorer. Taylor Harwood-Bellis was a beast for them at the back. Ian Matson was very, very good at left back, and all over the place on both wings for them last season. They've lost them; they haven't replaced them particularly well by the looks of things. And a lot of their key players from last year aren't getting in the team this year. Josh Brownhill can't get a game. Zaroury can't get a game. Ian Matson can't get a game. So there's a massive turnover in the starting 11. So it's really, really difficult to see how he's going to be able to correct that in time to go on a good enough run to keep Burnley up this season now. Before this is probably the biggest shock to me of the season, because I thought they were going to be that team that come out of the pack and maybe challenge like the top half of the table, as one normally does from promotion. But they're going to do very well to avoid relegation this season, albeit I think Company will be safe unless it gets atrociously bad and they don't win another game all year.
You know what? That Ian Matson would do well getting a game for Burnley, considering he's at Chelsea now. But the only thing I will say about Burnley...
Sorry, Manuel Benson's what I meant. Ian Matson I mentioned in my loan bit just before, mate, who isn't there this season, but was very good last season.
Right, okay, yeah, sorry to pick you up on that. But the only thing I will say about Burnley...
No, I'll find you.
is that there are some terrible teams in the league this year, Bournemouth being one of them, Sheffield United being another. Luton don't look great, albeit they have looked okay in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, if Burnley beat Bournemouth, like they're sort of 3-4 points above the relegation zone, it's like, okay, they're like, even though they've had a terrible start to the season, they're safe. So they're only a win away, really, or a couple wins on the bounce away. Albeit they did look terrible against Brentford, didn't they? Like they looked terrible. Did you do the Craig Bellamy overlap podcast where he basically said that the thing that they're not good at this year that they were brilliant at last year was off the ball work? So they're not compact enough. So, and I think that's basically due to the fact that they're playing with sort of 6 or 7 new players every single week, and they're not quite there yet under Company. But I think it will click for them, and they will eventually go on a run of fixtures. And I still think that they'll have enough to stay up.
But Burnley's losses this year, right? So started against Man City, lost. Then had Villa, lost, to both sides that are doing really well. Lost against Tottenham top of the league. Lost against Man United. United not made the best start, but are obviously still a big side. Lost against Newcastle, lost against Chelsea, and then obviously against Brentford. But the games that haven't been against sides that you'd maybe call big teams, beat Luton, drawn with Forest within that. So they must have a little run of fixtures coming now, Burnley, which isn't against your recognised top sides. And I think you say Company probably will have a bit more time. Looking at it, they've got Bournemouth, then they've got Palace, they've got West Ham, Sheffield United, Wolves, all within their next kind of set of fixtures. So they might turn that around, Burnley. I wouldn't write Company off or them in the Prem off yet.
Yeah, fair point.
And then, guys, sorry, the other game that I hadn't touched on was Brighton versus Fulham was the other fixture in the Prem. No, I know. We will move on to the EFL. Laura, going to come to you to discuss Leeds. So looking ahead, I think Yorkshire derby against Huddersfield at the weekend. But if you can also just touch on the midweek loss versus Stoke as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to see anyone lose their job. And we'll come on to Patrick Bamford later. But look, we weren't very good last night from start to finish. Stoke had the better of the first half, and we even in the second half where we grew into it, we were quite sloppy and didn't play the conditions very well, and we weren't our usual selves. We were forced into a couple of changes. We had a great result against Norwich last week, coming from 2-0 down to win 3-2. Somerville scored 2, but we had to bench him last night because apparently he's on painkillers and can't play 3 games in a week. So that was disappointing, but we still started Wilfred Nonto one side and Jaden Anthony the other, who were two very esteemed champions. Well, Wilfred Nonto is Italian international, and Anthony's had good success with Bournemouth in the past. But anyway, we sort of grew into the game, and we probably had the best of the second half up until about the 85th minute, where we were rewarded a penalty, which, to give him his due, Patrick Bamford won. But why on earth he's stepping up to take that penalty when he hasn't played regular football for 3 years? Every single penalty I've ever seen him take, he's missed. All the pressure in the world to score that pen in the 85th minute and grab the 3 points, and we're giving it to him. Like, he's done some wonderful things for our football club, particularly that first year in the Premier League where he got 17 league goals and was fantastic. But he hasn't been that same player for a long time now, and I think it's absolutely crazy. Because as soon as I saw he's taking the penalty, I thought to myself, Leeds have got a penalty, so that means Stoke have won the game. Because we were always going to miss it, and the momentum was always going to change. And you know what? It's like the Britannia or the Bet365, whatever it's called now, was just going to turn into an absolute cauldron for Stoke, and the ball was going to get sucked in at the other end. Patrick Bamford blazes the penalty 60 feet over the bar, got under it, then back. What happens? They go up the other end, get a corner, and we score an own goal. And it lets Mayaka down for 650 quid. So, all in all, a really bad night. Leicester won again and have just, sort of seemed to be defying all football logic and physics and stats from the past, which is just making the Championship a really boring league for me, and I'm rapidly falling out of love with the game.
Right, a little bit of positivity, Lauro. You're gonna play Huddersfield at home, and you're gonna absolutely batter them.
I agree. We'll batter them. I don't have any reservations about. Do you know what? Ipswich keep winning though. I'm waiting for them to slip up, and we're the only team still that have beaten them this season. They're almost toe to toe with Leicester, other than that loss to us. So normally the Championship is difficult because there's so many different teams of a similar level. This year it's difficult because it seems like there's like 3, maybe 4 teams that are really, really good, and obviously only 2 of them can go up automatically. But it's early. I don't get too high with the highs and low with the lows. I am an optimist with Leeds. I think we've had a great season so far. Impressed with a lot of the work the management have done, but that really, really pissed me off last night.
Yeah, Leicester now 14 points clear of Leeds, and Ipswich are 9 and do have a game in hand as well. So I think we touched on a couple of previous pods, didn't we? That it's still early days in the Championship, but do need to just keep the momentum going and keep on their coattails, because those 2 sides just don't seem to lose a game. So
just quickly though, on Leicester, I just think them doing so well this season is just a sign of how shockingly bad they did last year, because they've got such a good squad. They've got a Premier League squad, and even though they've sold their best player in Maddison and obviously lost 1 or 2 others, sorry, they've got a great squad. They've just got a Premier League squad, and it's showing. And they've no matter who they bring in, like, they'll be fine. And even like the Championships is a massive sort of momentum league, and I feel like even in their bad games they'll win 1-0. Do you know what I mean? Or even in their sort of momentum losing games, potentially they'll win or get a draw against Leeds or something. They'll play Leeds in next Friday, I think it is, and that'll be a good game. I'm looking forward to that one. But
game.
Yeah, great game. But yeah, it's just, for me, it's just a sign of how bad they were last year and how
but it's very rare that a team comes down that was that good, but also that keeps their players. It was like the other day, I was watching the highlights, and it was like Iheanacho's got 4 in 4, and you think, well, yeah, it's Kelechi Iheanacho, and he's playing at Hull, or at Hull, actually, the only team to beat in this season. But they seem to, I remember the transfer window was going on and on and on. Okay, they lost Maddison and Barnes, but you're thinking, when are these players going to leave? Why have they still got Vardy and Iheanacho? And I think Patson Daka's even still there. Why is James Justin still there? He was playing for England the other day, and now he's right back in the Championship. So,
and Ndidi, they've got Ndidi.
Yeah, Wilfred Ndidi, and who they use sparingly. I mean, like you said, Murph, there's a 14-point gap, which I don't think is irreversible at this stage of the season normally. But Leicester are looking more and more like an anomaly, and we're going to need them to, shit to really hit the fan for there to be any chance of anyone coming back. And I don't really see that happening now. So it's difficult for the rest of the league. But it's all about Ipswich, really. They need to stop winning. Hopefully soon.
The other thing with Leicester, just touching on who they kept, completely agree. But I think they added that Sasadi from Chelsea, the young lad in midfield who seems to be playing well. Harry Winks came in, who's unbelievable. Connor Cody is there, albeit was on the bench at the weekend, but we obviously know that he gets in England squads just because he's a leader. Mark Albrighton's still there. He came off the bench. Hamza Chowdhury off the bench. Jamie Vardy off the bench. They're unbelievable.
Yeah,
and they signed a player called Mavididi. Who, again, I'm not saying it's luck because it's obviously good recruitment, but he's English. And I don't know if I said this before. He holds the record caps in the French league. Like, I'd never even heard of him. Leicester have brought him over. He's been phenomenal for them as well. So, like, all of those ingredients are just sort of culminating in a cauldron of excellence, aren't they, at the moment? And we're going to need, something to go drastically wrong, really, for them to be anywhere off the top spot.
And just in a word, do you see things starting to go wrong away at QPR at the weekend?
No. No.
Me either. Yeah.
I mean, just on QPR, Gareth Ainsworth, who is a really likeable guy and did brilliant things at Wickham and had them overachieving for a long time. I don't want to say he's doing a horrible job, but I mean, I look every single week now. I look for QPR's Twitter after the game because I know they've lost, to look at the interview that he does after the game, and he says some really bizarre things and really doesn't conduct himself in the way that you expect managers to after the game. It's like he's not media trained or something. He just says some really odd things. Like, you just seen the video of him getting the hacker guy to come in and like dance in front of all the players and all these sorts of things. It's all right last season where he was like, it was someone else's group of players, but he's had the summer and they've started the year season this season. They're second bottom, only above Sheffield Wednesday, who are even horribler. And within that interview, he said, I don't want these players to give up on their dreams of keeping QPR as a championship club. And the fans are just in the comments going, why is it a dream for us to be in the championship? I don't remember the last time we were below the loads of people in QPR's lifetimes haven't been below the championship. They've been a Premier League or championship club the whole time. And it's like Ainsworth's come in and not read the memo that in the championship, really every single team, other than maybe one or two smaller clubs that get there every now and again, are looking for the playoffs. We're not looking to keep QPR up. And even if that was the goal, he's about 6 points off safety already. So that is disastrous at Loftus Road at the moment. And I think they'll probably be looking for their new manager now and maybe announce after their 11-0 loss to Leicester at the weekend.
I would have sacked him as soon as he brought in those New Zealand hacker people.
Yeah.
Those kind of quirky things you see, don't you? And it's all well and good when you're winning games, but if you're losing games or you're like a new manager into a new group and you're bringing in that, and like you just saw all the players looking awkwardly at like, what is this manager doing? Like he's not really got the vibe or the team dynamics at all, and he's just completely missed the boat really with that one. And actually,
that was an error in judgment, wasn't it? I think we can all agree that the New Zealand dancers were a nice idea.
Gareth's misread the room.
But he's a quirky bloke, isn't he? Like with his leather jackets and stuff, and it worked well at Wickham because they were like the perennial underdogs. But you go to a big club like QPR, and like you say, they've been a Premier League team in the recent history. I know they've got their financial issues, but yeah, not for me. They're going down.
They are going down, and I think that if you're a manager like that who comes in from League One and you sort of step up to a championship side or a bigger club, like the players are going to be looking for, what's this guy about them? What makes him sort of special? So for them to be called into a room and have someone from New Zealand come out and stick their tongue at them, they must have just thought, oh, good Lord. But yeah, I wish Gareth all the best in future endeavours because after the weekend, I think he's going to be jobless. Just a couple of other championship games. So touched on Ipswich doing really well. They host Plymouth. Obviously, they keep on winning, so they'll be looking to continue that. Tomo, just want to touch on Middlesbrough as well, post Stoke. So I think it was first 6 games couldn't get a win. Michael Carrick and been unbeaten since, but really looks like he's turning it around there, and they're starting to climb up through the table.
Yeah, 6 in a row now in the league. It just makes sort of it pays dividends to back your manager. And obviously he had a great year last year, didn't he? And struggled, I think lost 5 and drew 2 of the first 7 this season. Now they've gone 6 in a row and they're level on points with the playoffs and look like a banker to make the playoffs. A winnable game against Stoke on the weekend. You fully expect them to win. And then Plymouth next in the league. You just can't see them not getting a result. They obviously beat Wayne Rooney's Birmingham last weekend 1-0. And if we touch on them quickly, they lost 2-0 at home to Hull last night, and the players got booed off the pitch. One of the fans said to Rooney, "Why don't you fuck off back to America?" And Rooney, after the game, said that he thought his players gave up in the final 10 minutes, which says a lot about that. And he basically said that won't happen again. And I'm just thinking, well, the players clearly were having John Eustace and backed him fully, and they've just seen this big name manager come in. And I know it's early doors, and I know probably shouldn't jump to conclusions, but we spoke in the last pod, didn't we, about that being a bit of a poison chalice, and it seems to be going that way. They play, is it Southampton? They play away from home?
Yeah, and that's actually our Pyramid Pod Cup game this weekend. So that's on similar to Leeds v Huddersfield, an early kickoff at 12:30. So yeah, they go to Southampton. Southampton drew 2-2 with Preston, scored right in the last minute. I think their keeper kind of flicked it on and it hit a defender and went in for a own goal. But yeah, Southampton are in 5th and Birmingham are in 12th. So with the way that Birmingham have started, it looks like Southampton would be favourites for that, given the league positions. But much like the Championship always is, if Birmingham were to go and win that game away at Southampton, they would leapfrog Southampton and go into 5th place from 12th. So doesn't necessarily mean Southampton are an absolute can't, but Birmingham have obviously made a bad start under Rooney. But yeah, Pyramid Pod Cup game, that one. If you can't remember or haven't seen the rules for that one, I would invite you to go and watch our last episode titled Mooney Rooney. Where we run through it, and we did predict that this would be the start of Wayne's tenure. But we'll run through the Pyramid Pod Cup rules on that one if you haven't heard them already. Laurie, just on that game and on Rooney, Southampton, Birmingham, do you see anything for Birmingham there, or Saints win?
No, yeah, Saints win. I just think everything we've said and what everyone felt about that Birmingham appointment and switch manager and the timing of it and the release of John Eustace, it was always going to culminate in this. They're getting booed. They were 6th 2 games ago when John Eustace was there in the playoffs. Birmingham, they've never been anywhere near that in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, they're getting booed off 2 games later. So it was just shocking timing from the powers that be at Birmingham. And you just can't help but feel it's the Americans upstairs going, Rooney, instead of actually thinking through, football decisions. Do you know what I mean? It's just sort of like, oh, he's a big name. Everyone will be like, wow, Rooney. It's like, no, he managed Derby in the Championship a few years ago, and they probably didn't even know that. So despicable. And just to touch on Michael Carrick at Borough as well. He said that it pays to back the manager. He's shown what a great manager he is, because he lost all of his best players in the summer. And okay, they started poorly, but that, you need time to coach the new players and coach the new team that you're going out with this season. If that means having a bit of a hanging start, so be it, as long as you get the backing from top. So I think it's Gibson, still the chairman at Middlesbrough. Well done for sticking by Carrick, and well done, Carrick, because to win 6 in a row in any league's good, but in the Championship is fantastic, particularly off the back of a really dreadful start. So I agree, they're looking a good bet for the playoffs.
I think he's got the temperament, Michael Carrick. I know he had a couple of games in charge of United, didn't he, as caretaker at one of the seasons before he left the club. But he looks like he's got the temperament to be like a top manager, doesn't he? Like a real like top manager. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a United manager of the future.
Similar to Kieran McKenna, I think. Both sort of calm, measured guys, aren't they? And ironically, both out of Man United, who are, in my opinion, the worst run football club in England coaching wise.
Yeah, and both got absolutely slated in their time as assistant managers to Ole. So funny how that works. But and look, at the end of the day, 6 weeks ago or 6 games ago, we were talking about Michael Carrick going, he's got to do something there quickly because it was looking bad, wasn't it? And everyone was going, look, like Carrick's not the flavour of the month now. So look,
no. I think we did point out, to be fair to us on this podcast, that they'd lost Archer, they'd lost Chuba Akpom that had gone, and they'd replaced him with, at the time, a striker called Lati Lat, who I'd never heard of. And I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't either, T-Girl, on the same token. So I think we did. Well, I think we were quite measured with our analysis of Michael Carrick's start to the season. But of course, in any job in football, we always say it, you don't get time to turn things around often. But they've given him it here, and 6 wins paying dividend.
Yeah, as I say, I think he'll be a top manager, and he'll be in the Premier League very soon. And Middlesbrough fans will be hoping it's with them next season. Boys, move on to League One quickly. So fixtures looking ahead. So 23rd place Reading host first place Portsmouth. So I think we all know what the result's going to be there. Second place Oxford host Wickham. Barnsley in third place host Fleetwood. And then a decent looking game, actually. And I know we always have a chat with him about him, but Stevenage versus Derby. I think it's 6th v 7th in the league, that game. But there's been a bit of, Tomo, I think a bit of fan unrest at Derby with their style of play, and looks like Paul Warne under a bit of pressure there.
Yeah, he is. They won in the week 2-0 to alleviate a bit of that pressure. But I saw a picture of him the day he got the job at Derby, and he looked $1 million, looked like fresh faced, like ready for the challenge. And then I saw a picture of him at the end of last weekend when they lost, and he was in a woolly hat, and he looked like he hadn't eaten in about 2 weeks, and he looked absolutely knackered, not slept in ages, and clearly he's under pressure. And I actually think it's only a matter of time, unless he can string like a Michael Carrick, unless he can string 4 or 5 wins together. I think the Derby hierarchy will be looking to change, although he did sign a 3-year contract, didn't he? And I don't know Derby's financial situation at the minute, but can they afford to pay off a manager? I think he's got 8, so he'll have 18 months left, or maybe even 2 years left, in which case that's the best part of like £2 million, probably. So there'd be interesting one to keep an eye on, but look, they won 2-0 in the week, so the pressure's alleviated a little bit.
And Paul Warne's won League One twice before with Rotherham. So we know he's a good manager and can do it. And quite similar, actually, to the Middlesbrough one. They haven't really freshened. They lost David McGoldrick in the summer, ironically gone down a division, but obviously wanted to go back to Notts County where it all began for him. But that was 20 plus goals last season. And they haven't replaced him. They've got a very similar team to what I feel like they've had for a few years now, and they really didn't freshen it up. So maybe they want to give him January to bring some players in as well. But if they can just keep in and around the playoffs and sort of gradually build into the season, I wouldn't be looking to get rid of Paul Warne if I was the Derby hierarchy at the moment. I don't think. Who's out there that's going to be better than him with a better pedigree to get out of League One than someone that's won it twice with Rotherham?
Yeah, keep the faith with Paul. He'll get you there, Derby. And then just a special mention for Cheltenham as well. So at the weekend, they actually won their first league game of the season versus Cambridge. And in midweek, they did lose at Blackpool in 6th place, but they scored 2 goals in a 3-2 loss. So hopefully a bit of a turnaround there for Cheltenham. And they go to Port Vale at the weekend, where they'll be looking to try and gain a little bit more momentum. Boys, we'll move on to League Two briefly. And Tomo, a really nice looking game to start with. Notts County versus Wrexham, the 2 sides who came up from the National League in that great season last season, both scoring goals so far in League Two, both up there in the table. So probably a goal fest and a great game coming.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'd probably edge Notts County just for the fact that they're at home. But yeah, Wrexham got a win in the week. I think Notts County lost, didn't they? Did they lose? Yeah, and Mullen scored. He's back firing, like properly fit now, like match fit, if you know what I mean. I love that league. I don't know why. I just think there's so many weird results and loads of goals and with that game there, I wouldn't put it past Notts County to win 4-3, 5-4. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's a really good fixture to look forward to. But yeah, I'm just edging Notts County just for the simple fact they're at home.
And Notts County thumped Newport 3-0 in the week.
Yeah.
But I would like Wrexham to win that game. So I don't know what it is, but something a little bit special going on Wrexham in recent years. And Notts County fans aren't happy. They all want change. So they're only second in the league, 30 points, 2 points a game. Came up last season. They all want change. They're not happy with it. So hopefully they'll lose to Wrexham, and that will get them a little bit closer to change.
Well, we say all Notts County fans. I think this is a particular social media influencer for Notts County who wants change. I think that maybe he's only started watching football in the last couple of years and not known Notts County to ever lose a game. Tomo, I think you're thinking back to a couple of weeks ago where they lost 4-1 at home to Notts County, and there were certain people within the football community who are Notts County fans calling for change. They've since gone and won at Gillingham, who were up there, and smashed Newport. So hopefully that's alleviated a little bit of the pressure on the manager, who took them up on record points for the club last year and are now sat second in League Two, 2 points off top. But yeah, hopefully a little bit of rest for him from that. Intriguing game that. I think that will be absolute goals. And that's like the sort of game where it'll be a 4-3 or a 3 or a 5-4. So yeah, I'll be very much looking forward to watching that on the highlight show. Just a couple other games, boys. So Stockport, who are top of the league, versus Tranmere. Talk about them every week since we've last spoke. They've gone and won 3-2 at home to Grimsby, and then won away at Crewe 2-0, which is no mean feat because they're in fifth themselves. Crewe absolutely fly in. Doesn't look like it's going to stop. I'm just having a look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins in a row. 11 since they were last beaten. So I mean, they must be looking like an absolute sound bet to go up automatically, unless something drastic happens there. But yeah, they'll be looking to continue that at home to Tranmere. And then Mansfield, who we just touched on, who beat Notts County quite recently 4-1. They're at home to Walsall. They've actually gone back-to-back 4-1 wins there, away wins, away at Harrogate and away at Notts County. So yeah, they'll be looking to continue that against Walsall. So yeah, League Two, great league. From a ACCA point of view that Laura and I had on at the start of the season, it'd be really nice for Gillingham to start to turn their form back around. They did win away at Swindon in the week 1-0, and they host Newport this weekend. So yeah, hopefully their form can pick back up. But yeah, great league. Boys, running out of time, but we'll wrap up with the treble. Tomo, I'll come to you first. Have we spoken about the team today that's in your pick for the treble?
Portsmouth, yeah, they're going to beat Reading, and they're top of League One. I think the odds are 19-20, so not that bad to be honest. And yeah, just Portsmouth are just going to win.
Portsmouth are nearly evens away at 23rd place Reading.
Yeah, so I just think they'll go there, win, and at the end of the day, I think I'm letting the team down here when it comes to the trebles and potentially the whole podcast. But that's another conversation. Yeah, so I'm just trying to go for bankers so that for me, Portsmouth, top of League One, Reading, terrible, albeit they've had a couple of points deductions, so that probably skews their league position slightly. And that probably is why the odds are a little bit like that. But yeah, I just think Portsmouth will win.
Yeah, if Reading's 4-point deduction for the financial problems wasn't in place, they'd go from 23rd place to 23rd. So yeah, that's probably what they're blaming it on. I think that's an unbelievable selection. I think those odds are absolutely crazy. So yeah, love that. Lauro?
Obviously, I'm privy to what you two have picked, and they were quite modest odds. So I've gone a little bit out there, but it shouldn't be. I've gone Derby to beat Stevenage at nearly 2-1. I know Stevenage are a good side, but I'm back in the Rams and their saviour, Paul Warren, to go get 3 points and hopefully be part of our first Pyramid podcast winning treble.
That's seventh versus eighth.
Yeah, that's good odds as well, though. Derby at 2-1 against any side in that league, I like the look of. So love that. And then my selection is going to be Sunderland at home to Norwich. Again, they're above evens at 21-20. I know that Sunderland lost to Leicester in midweek, but I think they're a decent side. They're at home. Place will be rocking there against Norwich, who have lost 3 out of their last 4, and that one was a draw, the one that they didn't lose against Coventry. So they're bang out of form. Sunderland form's not been great either, but I give them home advantage there and fancy them at 21-20. So just quickly pricing that up, chaps, on Sky Bet. Obviously, other bookmakers are available. That treble there is 9.99 to 1, so just under 10-1. So £10 on that returns £109.93. So yeah, get that on. Hopefully get some winnings into the Pyramid Pod treble and get some money over to charities. So just to replay, Sunderland at home to Norwich, Derby away at Stevenage, and Portsmouth away at Reading. Chaps, that's all we've got time for.
Just quickly.
Go on, Tomo.
For those who don't understand betting odds, so 10-1, if you put £10 on that treble, you will lose £10.
Yeah, I think.
Fucking hell. Jesus Christ. That was a long way around to get that pun in, Teagan. Just very quickly, Murph, before we do finish, and I know we're running out of time, but you did promise our listeners at the start I'd just comment on Yeovil's continuing winning run.
Sorry,
there are thousands of listeners, so let's just quickly do that. Look, we've won 9 in a row. We're going for 10 on Saturday, and Hewish Park is a breast cancer awareness fundraiser type day on Saturday to go towards a new breast cancer facility at Yeovil Hospital, I think. So the team are playing in pink. Everything's pink. Get yourself down to Hewish Park on Saturday if you want to see the 10 win in a row Glovers march on. That is all we've got time for. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Laura.
No. And quickly, on Tuesday, Yeovil set a record, a National South record for the attendance. We had 6,297 fans in the ground, and I was one of them. And I think that is when you compare that to the Saudi Pro League, Jordan Henderson lost to Al Riyadh the other day in front of 696 fans, which is crazy.
Gareth Southgate sees as perfect preparation for Euro 2024 central midfielder.
Yeah, so rather than pick Jordan Henderson, have Matt Worthington in there instead. Boys, any more for any more? Pod that never fucking ends, this one.
No.
Great stuff. We'll wrap up there. We'll be back on Monday to review all the weekend action, look ahead to midweek EFL Cup and EFL action. Thank you very much. Speak to you all soon.
Cheers, boys.
Take care.